Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel, Rather Be Reading. Today's video is going to be my December wrap-up and January TBR. Now, all the books that I read this month I actually got from the library, so most of them I've already taken back, so I'll insert pictures of the ones that I don't have with me so that you can see what they look like, and I'll just go over what I read this month to start off with. Right. So the first book that I read this month was The Last Coyote by Michael Connolly. It's the fourth book in his Harry Bosch series. I actually started this series, well, I started it recently, but I had read prior to that the Mickey Haller series of his, which I really enjoyed, and the Harry Bosch character pops up in those books. I thought once I finished that series that I would go back and read his earlier series about Harry Bosch, and I'm enjoying them. I really enjoyed this fourth one. The Last Coyote was my favourite in the series so far, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The second book that I read this month was Call Girl, an Ivy League Lady of Pleasure by Jeanette Engel. This is actually a memoir about a professor who becomes a call girl. I didn't really enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars, I think, and it was just super preachy, and the author seemed really superior, like, to everyone that she was talking about, and I just didn't really enjoy that. So yeah, 2 stars. The third book that I read this month was The Good Thief by Hannah Tinty. This book was alright. It's about an orphan boy named Ren who has been living at this orphanage. He was pushed through the door of this orphanage when he was a baby, and I think he's 12 years old, and this man who claims to be his brother comes to collect him from the orphanage, Benjamin, and he goes off with him, and it's just kind of about their story following on from them. I just found it a bit meh, really, to tell you the truth. I just couldn't really connect to any of the characters. They seemed really underdeveloped. I know that the book has been described in a lot of reviews as quite Dickensian. I haven't read any Charles Dickens, so I can't really speak to that, but maybe if you are into Charles Dickens, it might be something that you would like. The fourth book that I read this month was The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. This is the first book in her Hercule Poirot series, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a really short, quick book, but somehow her characters still seemed really developed. Like, I understood all the characters, and it's just about, well, it's about a woman who kind of, I think they're out on a country estate of some kind, set during World War II, this one, I think, and the owner of the estate, the woman, is murdered at the start, and Hercule Poirot, the detective, comes to solve the crime, and it's just about him trying to solve the crime, and I loved it. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I knew exactly who had done it. I was wrong. I had no idea. I did not see it coming, and I love that in a book, so that it was just really good. I really enjoyed it. It was just short, quick, totally enjoyable, and I really look forward to reading more Agatha Christie. I can't believe it took me this long to pick something up by her. The fifth book I read this month was Going Home by Danielle Steele. It's actually, I think, the first book that Danielle Steele ever published, and I hated it. I gave it 1 star. It's just about basically a woman falling in love with a man and their relationship, but I absolutely hated it. I could not stand any of the characters. I've done a full review on Goodreads, and it's quite spoilery. I probably can't really say much more about how I felt about it without spoiling things for you, so if you're interested, you can go to my Goodreads, which is linked in the down bar, and check it out. I'll put links to all the books that I'm talking about today in the down bar. The sixth book I read this month was The World is Full of Married Men by Jackie Collins. This was obviously a month where I was trying to read some authors that I've heard a lot about and hadn't read anything by, and I also think this was the first book that she's published. And again, I didn't really enjoy it. The story just seemed really pointless to me. Just didn't seem to have much point at all. It's just really about a couple, David and Linda, I think their names are, and just basically about them and their relationship, but I just really just seemed a bit meh to me. actually gave it 2 stars, but I'm thinking that maybe I should actually drop that down to more like 1.5 stars, because there's this one scene in the book, which again, you can check my full review on Goodreads, which I talk about the scene. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything, but it just left a bad taste in my mouth. I just read that and thought, ugh, no, I didn't enjoy it. By the way, sorry if I'm sniffling a bit. Even though I'm in Australia and it's summer, I have somehow contracted a cold, so sorry about that. The 7th book I read this month was Two for the Dough by Janet Ivanovic. This is the 2nd book in her Stephanie Plum series. The first book, or at least I think it's just the first book, was made into a movie with Katherine Heigl. I actually haven't seen the movie, but you may have heard of it. I really enjoy this series. I mean, it's not going to win any literary awards or anything like that, but, you know, they're just really cheesy and totally enjoyable. So I'll probably just work my way through the series really slowly. I mean, there's 21 books in the series, so I'm not really in any rush to finish it, but I will keep going. The 8th book I read this month was Baby Be Mine by Paige Toon. This is actually the sequel to Johnny Be Good by Paige Toon. It's about a girl, Meg, who becomes, well, the first book is, she becomes a PA to a famous rock god, Johnny, and it just kind of goes from there. I don't want to say too much. I can't really say anything about the plot of this one without spoiling the first one, but again, it's just really like cheesy kind of chick lit. Was it a perfect book? No. Did I really, really enjoy it? Yes. This is something about Paige Toon's writing. I don't know what it is, but I cannot put it down. It was the same with when I read the first one, Johnny Be Good, and I was really surprised for it to kind of be a duology. I didn't know it was a duology when I first read it, and I didn't know that it was going to leave off on this kind of cliffhanger-ish ending in the first one, which I did not expect with like a chick lit type book. So, I mean, that was a real surprise, and I just could not put it down. Both cases with these books, I ended up staying up to like 2 or 3 in the morning finishing them. So, I mean, what does that say? It was really enjoyable. The 9th book I read this month was The Deep End of the Ocean by Jacqueline Mitchard. I'd seen the movie a few years ago, but I had never read the book, so I decided to check it out. It's basically about this woman, Beth, who is going back to where she grew up to attend her, I think it's her high school reunion. I think it's like the 15-year high school reunion, and she takes her 3 kids with her, and one of her friends takes the baby and is showing the baby off to some of their other friends, and she leaves her 2 sons to stand together while she goes up to the check-in counter, and her youngest son, Ben, is kidnapped. And it kind of goes from there. This book was just a bit of a slog. The overall premise, I think, makes it worth reading, but there's just a lot of the characters just kind of talking about how they feel with little dialogue, and that just kind of, it made it kind of hard to get through. And I found the main character of Beth just really unrelatable and hard to, I mean, I've never gone through anything obviously anywhere near as horrific as what she goes through in this book, so, but I found it really hard to relate to her. So I only gave this one 3 stars. I am interested in checking out the sequel because, as I said, the premise of this book is really interesting, and I kind of do want to know like what happens from next at the end of this book, so I probably will definitely check out the sequel. The 10th book I read this month was Trunk Music by Michael Connolly. Bosch is back. This is the 5th book in the Harry Bosch series. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as the last one, but again, it was really enjoyable. I think I gave it 4 stars. This one is about, they find a music producer dead in the trunk of his car, and I think it's kind of about whether he might have mob connections, whether this is a mob hit. And this one actually had a bit more of like a team vibe, which is a bit different from the earlier books in the series, so I definitely enjoyed this, and I will continue with the Bosch series. The 11th book I read this month was The Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. This is the first book in the Gemma Doyle series, and I really enjoyed it. It kind of starts off with a girl in India, an English girl in India, and she kind of has this vision that her mother kills herself kind of, but to escape something, and lo and behold, she finds her mother dead, and she is then kind of shipped off to a boarding school in England, and she meets a group of girls, and they kind of find this diary. It talks about the order, and it just kind of goes from there. And I enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a great start to a series. I really look forward to continuing the series and finding out more, really just about her relationships with different people, particularly with Catrick and Felicity. Definitely really enjoyable. Great start to a series. The 12th book I read this month was The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. This book has a really great premise. It's 1964, and a doctor takes his wife to his clinic because it's snowing really heavily, and he's hoping to meet the other doctor there who delivers babies, but the other doctor can't make it, but a nurse does, and so he has to deliver the baby himself, and it turns out to be twins, but one of the twins, the girl twin, has Down syndrome, and so he gives it to the nurse and tells her to take it to an institution, and tells his wife that the other twin has died, but the nurse doesn't take it to an institution. She decides to raise the baby with Down syndrome as her own, and it's dual perspectives from several different people's point of views. I didn't like it. The premise is great, but I just thought it wasn't done justice. I couldn't relate to the characters, as the story went on. Nora became, I just couldn't relate to her. I didn't understand the woman who had taken the baby, Caroline's, motivations as the book went on. I just really, I thought for such a great premise, it really could have been executed better. So I only gave this book 2.5 stars. The 13th book I read this month was What My Mother Doesn't Know by Sonia Soanes. This is actually the first book I've ever read in verse, and I enjoyed it. It's just about a 14-year-old girl, Sophie, and it's kind of about her teenage life, really. Obviously, being in verse, it was a really quick read. I mean, I read it in about an hour. It was enjoyable. I'd read other reviews where people had said that, that's not what teenage girls are like, and while I agree that it wasn't the type of teenage girl I was like, I think there are a lot of teenage girls out there like this, and I think it was totally believable, and I enjoyed reading it. So I gave this one 3.75 stars, and there's a sequel to this, What My Girlfriend Doesn't Know, that I'll definitely check out. And the last book I read this month was Real Murders by Charlaine Harris. This is the first book in the Aurora Teagarden series. This is just about Aurora is in a kind of real murders club, and when she goes to attend a meeting, she actually finds one of the members murdered, and it kind of goes from there. It's a mystery, and people are dying, and it's about them trying to figure out who is killing all these people. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed the mystery. I didn't figure out who the killers were, which I enjoy. I prefer not to guess. I mean, I love being surprised. I just felt like the main character, Ro, was a little underdeveloped. I felt like I didn't really know her at all, but this is only the first book in an 8-book series, so I will continue on, and hopefully she'll become much more developed as time goes on. Alright, now let's move on to my January TBR. As you can see, I generally read quite a lot of books in a month, so I'm probably just going to go through the first 5 books that I plan to read this month, and let you know about those, and then obviously when we get to my January wrap-up, you'll see what I really read. So the first book that I've actually already started is Tully by Paulina Simons. Paulina Simons is actually the author of the Bronze Horseman trilogy, which is on my list of books to read, but I haven't read it yet. And I actually have read one other book by her, which was about a pregnant woman who gets kidnapped, and this one is totally different to that, and this one again is totally different to the Bronze Horseman. So it seems like Paulina Simons writes a really diverse range of books, which is really good. This is about kind of a young girl, Tully, who is from the kind of wrong side of the tracks, and she's got these 2 best friends, Jennifer and Julie, and I think it's about 2 guys kind of come between them, and there's some kind of tragedy surrounding that, and then I think it kind of jumps to when Tully is an adult, and something comes up about that tragedy, and she has to deal with it again, and it's just about her dealing with that as far as I can tell. I'm only a little way into this, 39 pages, so I should definitely... This is a chunker though, it's over 600 pages, so this one will probably take me a little bit to get through, but hopefully I'll finish that this month. The next book I'm planning to read is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. This is a play about the Salem witch trials. I actually haven't read many other plays. The only other plays I've read is like Romeo and Juliet and Othello and things like that, Shakespeare, that I had to do for high school. So it'd be interesting to read a play because I haven't really read anything like that apart from this. So I'm really excited to read this. And the Salem witch trials is actually something that really interests me and I look forward to reading. The third book that I plan to read in January is Almost Perfect by Kelly Denley. This is actually a memoir about a woman with 8 children. I think this is about her struggles of her life and dealing with having 8 kids and all the other like life issues that come up during that. It's quite big as well for a memoir. I'm not really sure how this made it onto my list, but it made it on there for some reason, so I look forward to kind of finding out what it's all about. And the fourth book I plan to read in January is In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I've actually been really looking forward to reading this one for a long time. It's about a real murder. I think it's a murder of a woman and her 2 children. I'm not too sure on that, but I really look forward to reading this. And the fifth book that I plan to read in January is After Dead by Charlene Harris. Now, there are 13 books in the Sookie Stackhouse series, and then this is the novella that kind of comes after the 13th book, which irritates me. 13 books is already too many, but I've read them all, so I'll definitely be checking this out. And I didn't really like the way that the series finished off, so I'm hoping maybe some things will change in this and I might be a bit happier, although I don't think so. I don't think they can change the things that I didn't like in one short little novella, but I have to read this to find out what happens because I've read the rest. Alright, so that is my December wrap up and January TBR. I hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments what you're planning on reading this month. My favourite book this month is probably a tie between The Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. That was a 4-star book and I really look forward to continuing the series, so I've definitely really enjoyed that one. And also The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie because I loved that one. Actually, I'm not sure now why I only gave it 4.5 stars. I should definitely up it to a 5-star. So let me know in the comments as well what your favourite book was that you read this month. I'm always looking for more recommendations. That's why my list of books to read is 22 pages long. If you liked this video, hit the like button and please subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.